Alrighty then, welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program. Yeah, man, here on the edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B on the call. It's Friday. It's Monday. February 12th, 2024, and I hope everybody is out there doing well. I'm speaking kind of crazy tonight. I don't know why I'm speaking backwards then forwards, but I hope everybody's doing well out there on this day after Super Bowl 57, 58, god damn 58, trapped in the past. And the first day of the Kansas City Chief Dynasty. How's everybody feeling about that? Yesterday, the Chiefs won 25-22, thus starting their new dynasty. Like it or not, that's what it is. And again, I'm going to go on record by saying, why not us, right? And I get a lot of gruff on this show, and I get a lot of gruff in my life for being that way. But once again, a new NFL dynasty has been born, and it is not the Philadelphia Eagles. So I ask the question again, why not us? And when is it going to be our turn? But, of course, as long as we have certain individuals in charge of our football team, I don't think that day will come. But we're going to get into the Super Bowl. We're going to get maybe a little Eagles talk as well. Tonight is going to be primarily, though, for your boys of summer. That's right. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to be the dominant conversation topic tonight, as we are 2 days away, less than 2 days away, for pitchers and catchers reporting to Clearwater to start the 2024 Philadelphia Philly Spring Training Edition. And we're going to get into some Phillies heavier than we've gotten into the Phillies since the end of the season. Let's put it to you that way. Since the Game 7 of the NLCS, this is going to be the heaviest Philly conversation we've had here on the show. We're also going to talk some Flyers, of course, and kind of wrap things up. We got a busy night here on the edge of Philly Sports. I'm a very busy person because you're going to see me here in a little bit after this show. I'm going to be doing some double duty tonight, hosting or co-hosting with Al on Clear the Ice, as we're going to do some Flyers post-game stuff tonight. So let's get things started as we do every week here on the program, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. And I'm going to go all the way back to the year 1930. And once again, I'm going to preference all this by saying I was not physically present for this moment. Popular to contrary belief, I was not physically present in 1930 in Philadelphia to watch Connie Mack receive the, what was it called? The Bach Prize. That's right. It was a prize given out annually to the Philadelphian who had contributed the most to his community the year prior. And those of you who are familiar with Philadelphia baseball history know that in 1929, the Philadelphia Athletics captured the World Series. So Connie Mack was the first person in the sports world in Philadelphia to receive this award. It's still an award that's given out today, but on this day in 1930, Connie Mack was given the award for his contributions to bringing home a World Series to Philadelphia as manager of the A's. And again, I was not present for it. I wasn't present at the 29 World Series. I just want to put that out there very clearly. That had nothing physically to do with this. I'm just reporting on the history. But as promised on this program, I'm not going to gloss over the less sexier things. I'm going to talk about whatever that day in Philadelphia sports history is. And today it was the Bach Award given to Connie Mack for his contributions to the Philadelphia community in 1929 when he brought home a World Series to Philadelphia. You know, and if you think about it, the A's were actually the more popular and more lucrative franchise. Phillies have won 2 world championships in 151 years. And anyway, 50 years, 51, 150 plus. We start the 51st year this year. But anyway, that was your day in Philadelphia sports history. A little Connie Mack, a little Bach Prize, a little Philadelphia Athletics. So, of course, Phillies will face this year, the A's. I think they're coming to town. So there you have your day or your moment in Philadelphia sports history on the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on EOP. And that segment was brought to you by the good folks over at the Cherry Law Firm. Dave Cherry, for all your workman's compensation, motor vehicle accident, personal injury, or criminal law, give Dave a call today, 610-565-0300, and tell him Big Al sent you. Don't tell him I sent you anymore. I'm getting bad reviews from him. Apparently, I'm sending him the wrong people. But no, I'm just kidding. Tell him I sent you. But But yeah, so let's continue on and let's get into the Super Bowl, right? Everybody kind of says it was one of the more boringest Super Bowls that they've ever seen. And for, I guess, 2.5 quarters, that was the correct statement. I actually watched the whole thing, and I never watch a football game all the way through to include Super Bowls that don't include the Eagles. I can count them on my hands, the amount of non-Philadelphia Eagle-related games to include Super Bowls that I have actually sat and watched from start to finish. And for the only reason why I watched this one start to finish was because I had nothing else to do. I was bored as hell, and I decided to sit down and watch this thing. And it was, it was a game where obviously this season with the Kansas City Chiefs in general, speaking them specifically, they didn't have a great year dominantly, right? They've had issues with trying to. I mean, they led the league in drop passes. Their offense was not as prolific as it had been in years past. The 49er defense was definitely on display early on in this game. And, when you have a 10-point lead against the Niners against the Chiefs heading into the second half, you got to finish the deal. If anybody can tell you that, it's Eagle fans. You can't let Mahomes breathe. It's like Brady. I mean, whenever you deal with these types of quarterbacks, you can't keep them around. And the 49ers dominated defensively. But on the Kansas City Chiefs side of the ball, they dominated, or they did enough defensively to keep the Chiefs or keep the 49ers at bay. And you just knew it, didn't you? As this thing kind of wore on, as this game got older and older, that the Chiefs were going to find a way. The Mahomes effect would kick in, and it did. And it kicked in a big way. And obviously, when you get to a situation in the Super Bowl where you have overtime, only the second Super Bowl in the history of the Super Bowls that we've had an overtime game. You can't feel good if you're a 49er fan. You had to have felt like you done screwed up. You done messed up. You had to feel like that if you were part of the 49er coaching staff too, that you had a golden opportunity and you let it slip away. The Chiefs were frustrated. You were inside their heads. They're arguing with each other on the sidelines. You got Travis Kelce assaulting his head coach on the sideline, which I'm done with all that Kelce stuff. A side note, Travis and Jason both. I am so done with their post-football lives. I'm so done hearing about it. I'm so done seeing about it. Play football. Everything else, keep in your private life, keep private. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care about it. It's sickening. To me, it's tainting Jason Kelce's legacy here with this team. I thought it was in bad form in the Buffalo game where he was freaking out up there in the booth. I thought it was horrible. I thought it was disgraceful, and I still feel that way. And all the extra stuff that they're doing. Listen, they have every right in the world to go out there and make $1 million or $1 billion, whatever they want to do, market themselves, promote themselves any way they can. I'm just done with it, man. And my opinion about Jason Kelce has definitely turned since all of this stuff started. So, but when you have an opportunity to get the Chiefs down and you have them on the ground, you got to step on their throats, man. You got to crack their necks. You can't let them up. And the 49ers couldn't do it. And the Chiefs had something to do with that. Now, what I thought was the best thing about the entire Super Bowl, and I honestly believe that, was the postseason overtime rules. Man, that was awesome, right? I mean, and don't sit here and tell me out there that you all knew what the postseason overtime rules were. Oh yeah, no, no. Listen, when the Chiefs were driving back down and that clock was ticking off, and I'm like, dude, man, when's somebody going to call a timeout? We're about to run out of quarter here. Tony Romo, who I like as an analyst, I won't deny it. I think he's a hell of a color guy. I like Tony Romo. I didn't like him as a Cowboy. Obviously, I don't like any Cowboys, but I like Tony Romo as a color guy. I do. And Tony educated me. He said, well, listen, you out there, you might be thinking why they're not calling a timeout, because it doesn't matter. Clock runs out, second quarter. That's all it is. It's a new game. So, I kind of like those postseason overtime rules. Obviously, I wouldn't like them in the regular season. The game would be too long. But, if you're going to try to make it fair and take away the object of chance when you lose a coin toss and all that, and you don't want to play sudden death overtime, which I'm still a big fan of. Don't get me wrong. I think sudden death overtime is the best. But if you're not going to do that and you want to give everybody an equal opportunity and one possession, I guess that's the best way to try to kind of settle things in the postseason. I dug it, But as I'm watching Kansas City roll down the field, and I'm thinking to myself, there's just no way. One, they're not going to settle for a field goal, unlike what San Francisco did. They're not going to settle for a field goal. They're going to go for the win, and that's, of course, well, they really didn't have much of a choice but not to go for the win because they dominated as they kind of moved down the field. And they captured the game. And the better team won. The better team won. Not necessarily the better team that day, but the better team won. And we have ourselves a new era of we have a new dynasty in the National Football League, and it is the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid. That's right. Andy Reid. Andy friggin' Reid. 3 Super Bowl championships, 3 out of the last 5 years. And you got to tip your hat to him, man. And don't taste the sour grapes, Eagle fans. All right. For those of you that were around in 2012 and have conscious memory of what that was like at the end of the Andy Reid era here in this town, there was no coming back from Andy Reid. Andy Reid had done everything he could with what the Eagles had and what the Eagles could do. It was time to move on for both parties. So don't sit there and say, well, the Eagles done screwed up by letting Andy Reid go. First of all, there wasn't an Eagle fan out there that wasn't screaming for Reid's head. Starting around 2009, it was a constant, the rumbling got louder and louder and louder to get him the hell out of here. So I don't want to hear it. The end of 2011 was a disastrous season. It was time to move on. I'm not saying that it was time to hire Chip Kelly. I was never on board with Chip Kelly hire, but I was on board with firing Andy Reid because it was the time for both parties to move on. And he's now gone and duplicated and actually been a lot better with the Kansas City Chiefs. As it seems like every other coach, manager, player that we ever have here goes on and does well with other organizations and wins with other teams, i.e. Terry Francona and the likes of that. So Andy Reid is now in the conversation. Hey, Daniel, how are you? And Dave checking in. Dave, what's going on? Both defenses were pretty good, Dave. And that's going to lead me to a point here after my little rant, but I want to talk about that here as we transition to what all this means for the Eagles. But I thought, the conversation now is kind of starting to gravitate around, is Andy Reid one of the best coaches of all time? Listen, he's got a lot more work to do if you're going to put him in if you're going to elevate him there. 3 Super Bowl championships is nice. Obviously, Belichick's got 6, So whether or not you want to think that Brady was the reason he got 6, it's fine, but he still has 6. And he's going to have some more work to do. He's going to have to potentially pass Don Shula in the all-time wins list. He's got some more work to do if you want to consider him the greatest head coach of all time. Is he a Hall of Fame head coach? Absolutely, 100%. Right now, if he got out of football, he would be. But to put him up there and say, he's the greatest head coach of all time in the NFL, he's got some more work to do. But the more pertinent thing is that the Kansas City Chiefs are now a dynasty. And what does that mean for the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, Dave made an interesting comment and said both defenses were awesome. They were. Dre Greenlaw blowing out his ACL, running onto the field. That's bad luck and all that. And I hate to see a player go down. But the buzzing style of both those defenses, when a linebacking core, a safety unit, and a defensive backfield are actually stocked with players who know how to play the position and that are good at playing that position, that's what it's supposed to look like. Players buzzing around, bouncing around, firing off the edges. That was actually really good to see for the first time in watching. And as I said, by not watching other than the Eagles play, I'm kind of devoid of seeing that type of defense all season long. And to be able to sit down, and one of the byproducts of watching this game for me was to see what really good defenses look like. And to also think to myself, the Eagles are nowhere near that level on their defense. There is not one iota of anything that tells me that the Eagles are anywhere near what the level of defenses that the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers displayed yesterday. And actually, if you look back through the playoffs, they're not near any of those levels of the Ravens and the Bills and teams like that either. So the level now between the Super Bowl champion, the back-to-back 2-time defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Eagles is millions of miles away, millions of players away. And I dark days are coming, man. I'm telling you, dark days are coming here, because right before the Super Bowl, we were all burdened with the news, or given the news, that Hassan Reddick has requested and been granted permission to seek a trade. That's right. He is not feeling like he's being used the right way. Didn't feel that he was used the right way in the Sean Desai system, and doesn't feel like he's going to be used in the right way in the Vic Fangio system. So now he is requesting a trade, and the Eagles have given him permission to seek a trade. Listen, the optics of it are horrible, right? The optics of it are horrible. But if the Eagles are able to flip a first-round draft pick for it, fine. But it tells you again, you're going to hopefully restock the cupboards. But the window of opportunity that this team is supposedly in right now, that window is going to close a little bit longer if you're going to reset and draft somebody new. And I thought Nolan Smith was Hassan Reddick's replacement anyway, which is another interesting situation because Nolan Smith, does anybody see Nolan Smith as a Hassan Reddick type of defensive end? Is he the kind of edge rusher that you feel comfortable dealing with? I know that if you insert Nolan Smith for Hassan Reddick right now, there's going to be a severe drop-off at that position. But who knows? Now that Hassan Reddick wants out of here, you're probably going to have no choice but to put Nolan Smith in and maybe draft his replacement or maybe draft his safety net this year as well. So that's just another extra piece on the defense that the Eagles are going to have to restock while this offense gets one more year older and these skill position players get one more year older as well. So the news that Hassan Reddick wants to request a trade and been granted the permission to do so does not look too good for the current Philadelphia Eagle window of opportunity. If anybody out there actually still believes that there is such a thing for this team, when you have a team that's literally going second year in a row, replacing both coordinators, has major regression from their franchise quarterback who's about to get paid, is devoid of any talent in the linebacker, safety, or defensive or cornerback situation or position group. If you actually think there's still a window of opportunity for a team like that, now this news with Hassan Reddick should not really make you feel good. Even the biggest homers that I know here on Edge of Philly Sports, you know what? No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to speak for them because, boy, they can take a hurricane and turn into a sunny day and better than I've ever seen anybody else do. So I'm not going to make a broad statement like that. But for me, it was a Debbie Downer anyway. The news of Hassan Reddick wanting to be traded, it just kind of just lends into my narrative that this is a dumpster fire wrapped around a runaway train heading down a cliff. So, yeah. So the news, so the Kansas City Chiefs are a dynasty. How's everybody feeling about that? And then with the dynasty effect, right? I went to thinking, I've been around a while. How many dynasties have I now been alive for? I mean, how many dynasties have I been privy to be part of? So I went back into the archives of the National Football League, and I was astonished by the dynasties that I've lived through. And it brought me back down through memory lane a little bit. And I want to share that with you here because I think it's pertinent to our conversation because it's my dime anyway. But so I was born in the midst or during or right before the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty of the 70s. The 2 Super Bowls, then they took a couple years off and they won 2 more at the end of the 70s. So I was kind of like, I don't know, like 5 through 9, 5 through 8 around that time frame of my life. I don't have any conscious memory of it at all. But I was alive during it. Then, of course, the Niners of the 80s, which to me, all the talk about Tom Brady and what he has done and Pat Mahomes, what he is and what he probably will do when it's all said and done with, about the best quarterbacks ever. And I'm not sitting here going to tell you that Tom Brady doesn't deserve that accolade, doesn't deserve that opportunity or praise. Same thing with Pat Mahomes. But I've never seen anybody do it quite the way Joe Montana did it. And I haven't seen anybody do it quite the way Joe Montana has done it since. And I'm still going to maintain that Joe Montana is the best quarterback ever to play this game. And what he was able to do in the 80s with that dynasty of the Niners was absolutely amazing. So I lived through that. And then, of course, the dark days of the Cowboy dynasty of the early 90s, which, I blame one lousy trade, the greatest trade ever. And I got to give it to the Cowboys on that. The Herschel Walker deal was the greatest trade ever. To literally build a dynasty from one trade, there's something to be said about that. So I had to live through the Cowboy dynasty of the 90s. And to watch that thing fall apart, of course, was the greatest thing I've ever seen. But I lived through that one. And then, of course, I debated whether or not the Broncos of the late 90s, when they went back-to-back there in 99 or 98 and 99, was that dynasty-like? And I came to the conclusion that it wasn't. That it was more like John Elway getting finally the recognition he deserved, or the accolade he deserved for a great career, and finally getting an opportunity to win a couple Super Bowls. But to say the Broncos were a dynasty for 2 years, you got to be dominant more than 2 years in order to be called a dynasty. So I'm not going to give it to the Broncos, which then of course will lead us to the Patriots and what they were able to do throughout the 2000s and teens and into the early part of the 2020s or late teens, whatever. And now here we are, Kansas City Chiefs. So the new dynasty is in town. And how's everybody feeling about that? And again, my opening question, when is it our turn? And why can't it be us? Don't really understand. I really don't. Mike, I'm just glad the whining 49ers lost the way they did. Whining 49ers. Yeah, whatever, Mike. I'm not... I don't throw my hat into all that. They can whine. This is what bothers me. Do you remember about a year ago, Mike? Do I need to refresh your memory about the sod father and about the ticky-tack holding call at the end of the Super Bowl? We weren't necessarily taking it like champs either now, were we, Mike? Listen, I get it, and I get the versatile and all that, especially towards 49ers. But we were just as bad as they were, last year when we lost, all right? We were blaming the groundskeeper, all right, for God's sakes, of why we lost. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on the whining thing. We are equally held accountable for that as well. I don't throw my hat into that ring at all. You go out there, you roll the dice, you play the hardest you can, and you hope to God that the outside factors that are part of the game don't affect you to the point where you lose the game. And if they do affect you to the point where you lose the game, you pick yourself up, you brush yourself off, you tip your hat to your opponent, and you come back and you fight another day. That's the kind of school of thought, or the place that I was raised in. I'm not going to, listen, I get what you're saying, but we're not, and when I say we, I mean Eagles fans. We were doing a fair amount of whining this time last year ourselves. So let's remember that. Michael says the Steelers, Niners, Dallas, Patriots, now the Chiefs. Yep, that's the same thing with me, Mike. We are in the same genre, or we are in the same era. Broncos, not dynasty. Yeah, no, Mike, I agree with you there. I think that, as I said, I think it's more of a accolade to what Elway went through in his career, and to not, he lost the first 3 times he ever went to a Super Bowl, and then he finally gets an opportunity with some good teams at the end of his career there to capture 2 of them. So no, I agree. The Broncos, they are not a dynasty. He's not a Dallas fan, but if Jerry let Jimmy be Jimmy, the Cowboys, in my opinion, might not have won. Yeah, they were something to be had, and it was man. God, I remember those times too, and we weren't that good. I mean, we were post Buddy Ryan. It was Rich Kotite. We had really kind of messed up on, we had great defenses those years, but we just didn't have the offense to kind of go head to head with the Cowboys, with the Irvings and the Smiths and the Aikmans and all that. Moose Johnson and Emmitt Smith. I mean, we just did not have the offense, and that was an amazing offensive line the Cowboys had. We just didn't have the offensive horses to go up against the Cowboys. We had very good defensive teams of those years, but we just did not have the offensive horses. And boy, man, I swear to God that sucked. Man, I hated life then. I hated life because I was kind of living outside of the Philadelphia area, and I had a friend of mine who was a Cowboy fan, and he was a bandwagon Cowboy fan, but still, I had to deal with it, and man, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just a real bad time, and I was so happy when that era ended, and they fell off. I was very, very, very happy. We need an Eagle player today to slip. No, David, we do not. I was just ranting about that. I don't need any more of that. As I was watching that game, I kind of started rooting for the 49ers, and I ain't gonna lie to you, I did, because purely of the Travis Kelce nonsense. Listen. I don't know what's going on with Andy, and I know Travis was amped up about that whole incident on the sideline, but I don't know, man. I don't know who he thinks he is. I don't know who Travis Kelce thinks he is, or Travis Swift. Is that what he's going by now? Whatever he's going by, it's a disgrace. I think he's a disgrace, and I'm telling you, his brother Jason is losing a lot of cash with me, man. I'm done with that whole thing. I'm done with it all. I play football, retire, go off, do your podcast, do whatever it is you want to do. I just don't want to hear about your personal life anymore. I don't care about your personal life. And again, I know it's not them putting that stuff out there, but Jason Kelce is not innocent in all this. He's promoting himself. He's trying to build his life after football. Everybody has a right to that, but I thought he had more. I thought he was a little bit more grounded. His wife, Kylie, God bless her. I don't. Obviously, there's a woman who doesn't want all that nonsense and is trying to kind of stay out of it. So God bless her. I'm sure he's a handful to deal with, and that whole situation's a handful to deal with. But I am so done with all that Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce nonsense. Honestly, I am. But 25-22, Patrick Mahomes is your Super Bowl MVP, and a couple records went bye-bye yesterday. A couple records, and one of them, of course, it didn't go away, but it was at the time an Eagle only. And then yesterday, because of Jennings and his touchdown reception and his touchdown pass, joined Nick Foles as the only players in Super Bowl history to ever catch and throw a touchdown in a Super Bowl. So we lost an Eagle record yesterday, or we didn't lose it, as I said. We lost sole possession of it, as now we're sharing it with a 49er. And yeah, that was a kick in the junk too. And then, of course, the other big story for me yesterday was the field goal. The two field goal records that were broken. There was a lot to do on social media about, what are you talking about? A 55-yarder is a Super Bowl record. That makes no sense. Well, actually, it makes perfect sense. Who in the hell is kicking field goals in a Super Bowl? Who's lining up? Who's strategizing to kick a field goal in a Super Bowl? No, it's kill, 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 kill. And, so I could see why a 55-yarder was a Super Bowl record. And then, of course, that record was broken a mere few hours later by a 57-yarder by the Chiefs kicker, who, by the way, Harrison Butker, was my fantasy kicker all year. He got me a lot of points, and he was able to set the record at 57. So we had some records be set and broken and set again, and then we had an Eagle record kind of, as I said, not fall off, but, get joined by somebody else. So, all in all, it was a very entertaining game, I thought. I know, as I mentioned, the first 2.5 quarters, not so much. But as this game kind of got rolling through it, it was very entertaining for me as well. So, are you surprised what Swifty didn't vote Travis MVP? Yeah, you're right. Listen, I think it probably came down to the two of them. But Pat Mahomes really kind of put his team, again, David, I'll mention the fact that this is why we are, as the Eagles, so far away from being anything like the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm not saying the Eagles can't capture lightning in a bottle and win a Super Bowl. I'm not saying that. But to think that we are a dynasty in the making, that what we have going on here in this town is going to rival, is going to be the new dynasty, that is completely misled. If you think that, you're crazy, because there's no way that our coach comes anywhere near the Andy Reid. We have a coach who literally was asked in a press conference what his role was, and he actually answered it seriously by saying, "I'm the head coach." Like that was a serious question. No, it wasn't. It was a satirical, if you're going to let the offense run itself and the defense run itself, what the hell are you doing? But no, our idiot head coach says, "No, I'm the head coach. I'm going to pop in defensive meetings. I'm going to pop in the offensive meetings." How many defensive and offensive meetings does Andy Reid pop his head into? I'm going to tell you, probably pops into none of them, because he's in charge of it all. He sits his coordinators down, tells them what needs to be done. They go off and do it. They report back to Andy Reid, and then they go off and they win 3 out of 5 Super Bowls. That is how that's done. Not what the clown show we got going on here, where we're going to have a guy wearing "Beat Dallas, Dallas Sucks, Win Rocky Win" T-shirts on the sidelines, with pins on his little visor to memorialize the fallen, and not be a head coach. So to think that we are anywhere near a dynasty in this town, I hope what you saw last night, if anything, taught you or showed you that this football team, the Eagles, are nowhere near being a dynasty. Can it capture lightning in the bottle and win a Super Bowl? Yeah, of course. But to think that they are going to give us what we deserve, and that is a dynasty. And yes, we do deserve a dynasty. And I get shoo-shooed, poo-pooed, talked off the ledge all the time when I mention dynasties by saying, what are you, crazy? Why am I have to be crazy to mention a dynasty? Why can't it be Philadelphia? It happens a lot. I just cited about 6 of them have happened in my lifetime. Why can't the Eagles be part of that? I want to tell you why. Because we don't have the right people running the football team right now. We don't have the right people making decisions for the football team right now. We don't have the right people playing for the football team right now. All those factors come into play. And then, listen, it's today, and it was throughout the history of this organization. I'm not just blaming it for today. But that's why we can't have a dynasty. And yes, we should have a dynasty. And yes, they are pretty common. I mentioned 6 of them that have happened in my lifetime, with the newest one happening today. So if you want to see what it's like to be a real winner, it's the Pat Mahomes, it's the Tom Brady's, it's those types of quarterbacks who, by the way, you know, Tom Brady drafted in the 6th round, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy drafted in the 7th round. I am not comparing the 2 quarterbacks. Brock Purdy is a system quarterback. That is all he is, and that's all he will ever be. But he's a smart system quarterback. He makes right decisions with the ball. He can't improvise to save his life, and I don't think they're ever going to ask him to improvise to save his life, but he's a system quarterback who does what he's told to do in a Kyle Shanahan ran offense. Now, obviously, they couldn't hold a 10-point win against the Chiefs. They couldn't generate offense themselves. There's some work to be done there. Get it. But I would take Brock Purdy over Jalen Hurts right now because Brock Purdy can read a defense. Brock Purdy can check down. Brock Purdy can go through his progressions. Our quarterback can't do any of that except for the check down part. Okay? So if you want to see, and I realize what I'm saying might, again, come off as the anti-Eagle Matty B that I am. I'm not anti-Eagle. And I'll never be anti-Eagle, but I am anti-losing. And that is something that this town and this fan base has accepted for far too long, is the fact that we lose. And it's time not to accept that anymore. And when you see the dawning of a new dynasty, and you listen to homers on this network, ran on and on about the greatness of Howie Roseman, ran on and on about about giving Nick Sirianni another opportunity. That tells you that we've accepted losing in this town, and that we've accepted losing on this football team, and that we will never be a dynasty like the Kansas City Chiefs. So if everybody's cool with that, then maybe I can stop ranting. But I'm not cool with it, so I'm not going to stop ranting. But anyway, there you have it. The Chiefs. How did I turn a Chiefs Super Bowl thing into an Eagles rant? Only I can do that. All I know is Kyle Shanahan is the same category as Andy was in Philly by losing championship games and Super Bowls and not getting the team over the hump. Yeah, you could make a case for that, Mike. Absolutely. I don't know. Definitely make a case for that. His defense balled out for him, though, man. His defense played their ass off. They just could not do anything offensively to put away the Chiefs, and you can't leave the Chiefs hanging around. 10-point lead is not going to do it against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's really not, and they just couldn't get the offense going. Maybe it is the quarterback. I don't know. Well, most of the NFL doesn't have the right people running their own organization to make a dynasty. If creating a dynasty was in. So again, Mike, you're missing the point here. Again, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagle fan base. We're justifying why we can't have a dynasty. Why are we doing that? Why in the hell are we going to justify by saying, oh, most organizations don't have the right people running it? Well, okay, why does it have to be us? And if that's the case, why are we accepting that? And if dynasties were that easy, everybody would do it. I agree with you, Michael. I'm not saying I don't agree with that. But why can't it be us? Don't sit here and justify why we are losers. That's what I mean by this fan base right now. Instead of addressing the problem that we have with this organization, we're going to justify it by saying, well, not everybody wins a Super Bowl, or not everybody has a dynasty, or not everybody does this. I'm not concerned about what everybody does. I'm concerned about what the Eagles do. And why the hell can we not have a dynasty? So again, that's my point, Michael. That's the mindset that this fan base has accepted. And it sickens me that we think that way. I understand you're 100% right on point of what you said, but it doesn't mean you have to accept that. It doesn't mean we have to accept that. It doesn't mean we can't hold our football team to a higher standard than what we've been given. Why not a dynasty? Kansas City Chiefs got one. Does their fan base deserve it more than we do? No. New England Patriots had one. Did their fans deserve it more than we did? No. And you're right. Probably every other fan base may have that same opinion. That's great. Then they should hold their organizations to that standard. And everybody should push their organizations to be a dynasty. Again, I get what you're saying, but you have to understand what I'm saying. It's a mindset that we have to stop comparing ourselves with the rest of the league, saying, well, if not everybody gets, yeah, but why can't we? That's my point, man. We used to be the badass Philadelphia Eagle fan base. What has happened to us? I would love anything for a dynasty, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I know you would, but we got to stop thinking like that. We got to stop thinking, well, it's not that easy. I agree with you, but we should have a dynasty here. David says less than 2 days of spring training. David, from your mouth to God's ears, we're going to get into the Phillies here after I finish my little rant around the Super Bowl and the Eagles, of course. But yeah, so 25-22, the Super Bowl was over. It is official. The football season has ended. And on the Edge of Philly Sports, or here with me on Talking Philly Sports with Matty B, make sure that you're back on Saturday at noon for the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn, as we will wrap up the season. Me and Kyle will go over what we missed, because we haven't spoken since before the Eagle-Buccaneer wild card game. We of course, we said that if the Eagles were to lose that wild card game or anywhere in the playoffs, we would stop and then not come back till after the Super Bowl. Of course, Eagles lost in the wild card game, so we will be back on Sunday or Saturday at noon to wrap up the entire season. We will also reveal how we did with our picks back in August. If you remember, back in August when we started this, when we premiered the show for the season, we gave our first place in the division, last place in the division. We gave our wild card teams. We gave our NFC, AFC championship game matchups. We gave our Super Bowl matchups, and we gave our Super Bowl prediction as well. We're going to reveal how we did on those. It's stunning when you hear the results. Matter of fact, I got to pat myself on the back a little bit. But more about that on Saturday. Make sure you're tuned in for the Birds Blast here on the Edge of Philly Sports with Kyle Quinn and me, as we will wrap up our 2023 football season and send everybody off into the off season with a warm and fuzzy that we are not a dynasty. But yeah. All right, before I transition back to the Phillies. Now, again, as I said, we're going to talk in depth about the Phillies. The most in depth we've talked about the Phillies on this show since the end of last season. That segment, or the Eagles Super Bowl, Why Aren't We a Dynasty rant segment, was brought to you by Sherry's Ticket Town for great prices and no hidden fees. Make sure you're checking out Sherry's Tickets at www.sherrytickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946 for the best prices in sports, concerts, theater tickets. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. That is the promo code EOP10 to save an additional 10% on the great prices and no hidden fees of sherrystickettown.com. As mentioned by a few people now, me and I believe David, 2 days, less than 2 days before the Philadelphia Phillies will renew that annual rite of passage, and that is the start of spring training. Pitchers and catchers report on Valentine's Day. The trucks left last week. That they did their little truck day celebration down there at the bank. They're in Clearwater. I would imagine there's workouts all over the place. Non-affiliated team workouts have probably been happening since about middle of January, maybe even earlier than that. But on Wednesday, it's going to kick off for real, for at least for the pitchers and catchers. And then, of course, I believe the 19th is when the rest of the squad comes, and I believe the 20th or the 19th is the first official squad workouts of the spring. And the Phillies will be entering this spring training the exact same version of the team that walked off the field in 2023. Now, there is a bunch of free agents still floating around out there. Every year, it seems we wait longer and longer for the free agent dominoes to fall. This year, of course, being no different. It's been very quiet around the MSN NFL, around MLB baseball. In general, not a lot of free agents kind of going away. There's a ton left out there, a ton of meat on the free agent bone. Just to kind of go over some of them that are still available: Joey Votto, Liam Hendricks, Cody Bellinger, I almost called him Eva, Evan Longoria, Brandon Crawford, AJ Pollock, Julio Reyes, our boy Gene Segura, Will Myers, Matt Chapman, who did receive a qualifying offer, Jorge Soler, who I would love to have here on the bench, Michael Brantley, Mike Clevenger, Brandon Woodruff, Randall Grichuk, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, of course, two names that are associated with the Phillies as they're trying to try to get some more starting pitching depth. But the Phillies did address that, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the list goes on and on of available free agents that are still there. And will there be some signings? I mean, these players, the majority of these players that I just named will have teams in 2024. It's just a matter of when they sign or with whom. And I don't know if it's a price gouging situation at this point. Or teams waiting to see with injuries and potential, camp battles. I don't really know what the holdup here is on all this. There's not a new collective bargaining agreement that's kicking in. I know that all that's done with, but the Phillies, for the most part, minus a few tweaks that we'll get into, are going to enter this season in the same shape that they were when they walked off the field in October. And that is a team that could not get over the hump and get to the World Series. I have been, over the past few weeks, if you've been checking out our Facebook and our webpage, you've been noticing we've been doing articles of the 2024 Philly player spotlight highlight articles, where we're taking a couple players a week and we're doing a little position piece on them, talking about their season last year, strength, weaknesses, and projections of 2024. I've been writing these articles. I've done about 7 of them. I dropped one the other day on the Bryson Stott, where on the tagline on the social media page was, "Is Bryson Stott a core member of this team?" And I got a lot of backlash over that question, and I'm going to address that here. But for the most part, I'm going to ask a question. How can you get excited when it's the same product coming back? How can you get excited about a World Series championship when it's the team that, one, couldn't win the World Series in 2022 and failed to qualify for the World Series in 2023, and it's the same exact product? And then before you hit me with the ambiguous, what do you expect them to do, sign key free agents or big-time free agents every year? Before you hit me with that, the answer is no, I don't expect that. And they actually did do that this year by re-signing one of their own. But my question is, how can you get excited for the team that's running back exactly the same product, literally, minus some key pieces, because now we've lost Craig Kimbrell, which, say what you want about him. He was a viable piece in the back end of the bullpen if used correctly. He wasn't used correctly down the stretch of the season, and I'll attest to that. He shouldn't have gone back-to-back in the NLCS. He never pitched well back-to-back, but yet our manager decided to run him out there back-to-back. But we're going to run the same team back, minus a key piece missing out of the bullpen, the same bench that did absolutely nothing offensively for us, and then the same very questionable yet serviceable but very shallow starting rotation, that has got some questions heading into this season, and the same manager who, let's face it, folks, what is this guy? Who was Rob Thompson, man? And why does he deserve a 2-more-year contract extension? But we're going to run the same thing back and get excited about it. I'm having a hard time getting excited. I usually get excited this time of the year. I am usually a bundle of nerves 2 days before, I'm not saying bundle of nerves, but a bundle of excitement 2 days before the start of spring training. But how can I get excited about this? It's the same thing. It's the same product that lost last year. Yeah, 90 wins, good stuff. But they couldn't get over the hump. Now, we're talking about not being able to get over the hump. Now, what did they do in the offseason to get better? Is there some players internally that might take that next step in spring training? Absolutely. There's always those names. There's always a guy like an Orion Kirklinger that starts out, totally anonymous to start the season, and then all of a sudden he's a part of the end of it all. I get all that. But what is this team going to be in 2024 that was different about it than 2023 positively, right? What did they do to be better? I asked that question to everybody out there. What is that? Well, the Phillies messed with Wheeler, and I'm glad he wants to bring Struck. Yeah, I mean, then you got the Wheeler thing, too. Is that going to be a distraction during spring training? Are the Phillies going to try to get the extension done now, or are they going to shut it down, much like they did with Nola, and then wait till the end of the season when he's a free agent? I mean, there's a lot of things that just are not sitting well with me right now. The Phillies aren't trying to get pitching depth in Snell or Montgomery. They're trying to cover their less if Wheeler walks. We're going to address that. We have Harper the whole season at first base is resolved. Okay, we do have Harper, absolutely, and he'll be 100% healthy heading into this season. Have a full spring training down there at first base to kind of work out any more bugs that he might have had. He played pretty damn good at first last year, and of course, not having to have to wait for him. Technically, have to wait for him for 3 months to kind of heat up. Now he typically starts off a little bit on the cold side, but obviously it's going to be a different type of. It's the normal. It's not necessarily working back from Tommy John. I get that. And then they were a bad game away from the World Series. David, were they really, though? Were they really a bad game away from the World Series? Because last time I checked, they were up 2-0 in that series. They should have been 2 good games away from getting to the World Series. Then they were up 3-2, David. And they lost Game 6. And then they lost Game 7. So come on, David, let's call a spade here. Let's not pussyfoot around some stuff. They were 1 bad game away from the World. David, come on, man. That series wasn't lost in Game 7, David. You know that as well as I do. That series was lost in Game 4, all right? Come on now. Let's pat ourselves on the back. Let's splash some water in our faces, and let's accept the reality here. Game 7 was just the epilogue of that series. The series was lost in Game 4, all right? Come on. We all know that now, right? Can we agree to that? Let's not lose perspective. We've had some time. We're separated a little bit from it, but let's not lose perspective of what that series was and a microcosm of what it was about the Phillies season. Inability to drive runners home in scoring position. Inability for the bullpen to kind of, I should say for the ability for the bullpen, but the manager's questionable decisions late in games, primarily with the bullpen. I mean, those were some of the problems that really kind of festered with this team all season long. The team's zealous approach at the plate, swinging at stuff that's far outside the strike zone and swinging for the fences. These were things. Those last 3 games of the series were a microcosm of the Phillies season. So that was Game 7, but let's not say they were 1 bad game away from the World Series, David. Come on now. Let's be honest about it. Let's let the folks out there know that. That's not the case, all right? It was a horrible Game 7, but it never should have got to Game 7. It never should have. The thing should have been over in 5. And let's be honest with ourselves. Please. Mike says, the Phillies bumbling full match. Jeez. Man, is Howie Roseman the manager of the Phillies? No, and we're going to get into Rob Thompson, too. I'm just wondering how long it's going to be. What is it? A 1-5 start, 2-6, 3-5. I mean, maybe 3-5 not, but what? 1-5, 2-6, 4-7. Is that the type of start before we start hearing about the fire Rob Thompson from me? Because I'll be the first one to start it. But yeah, that's Rob Thompson's another story on this team, another issue. The number one issue is too many players with no options left. Too many players with no options left. Do you mean like minor league options, or what options are we talking about? Is that what you mean? I'm not really sure what you mean by options left. But let's get back to the Phillies. Let's get back to the Bryson Stott thing that I kind of started off with. So I took some slack or took some heat about the tagline, "Is he a core player?" And I based the tagline off of a big conversation from last season. And what was the conversation? What kept popping up all last season when it came to Bryson Stott? The comparison to Chase Utley, right? The unfair comparison to Chase Utley. I didn't work today. I took the day off for a personal maintenance day because, I'm retired Army and I can do that now. But I spent the last 5 hours of my day today watching clips from every All-Star game from 1995 through 2017. Do not judge me, please, right? And Chase Utley, I believe, first showed up in an All-Star game in, I think it was 04 was the first All-Star game I saw him in. And basically was a fixture in the All-Star game through 2015, I want to say. I think 14 might have been the last one he was in. And it kind of got me thinking about Chase Utley and the legacy of him, right? Joe Morgan is probably the greatest second baseman ever to play this game. And I don't think there's much debate there. But after that, we go to Ryan Sandberg typically. That's the next player, right? And I'm not going to take anything away from what Sandberg did as a player. Utley did not have the years of Sandberg. Utley's knees didn't allow him to play that way, and that affected his legacy. And that may ultimately affect why Chase Utley, it may be a struggle for him to get into the Hall of Fame because he just didn't have the health to kind of have a prolonged career at an excellent rate, at a high rate. So I guess we can but there's a lot of, when I look at what the body of work, when Utley was on his game in his prime, there wasn't a second baseman out there that could touch him. He revolutionized the position when he came into the league. He was a power hitting second baseman. Wasn't really a thing before him. And, he was an above average defender, not the greatest, possibly responsible for the greatest defensive play in Philadelphia Philly history in Game 5 of the World Series, or Game 5 Part 2 of the 2008 World Series. But he, in my mind, is not a Hall of Famer. He's a Phillies Wall of Famer. He should be on that Wall of Fame now. I don't know what's taking so damn long. His numbers should be retired, along with Rollins and Howard. And he should be the next Philly in Canton, in Cooperstown, right? That's where I look at Chase Utley. Especially in Philly. I guess you got Chase Utley and then Manny Trio and then a bunch of whatever for me in my lifetime. And I think Chase Utley was a hell of a lot better player than Manny Trio and then blew Juan Samuel off the face of the earth. But there was a constant comparison to Bryson Stott and Chase Utley last year. And I thought that was extremely premature. Not to say that he might not one day be that way and that he might not one day round into form to be a Chase Utley. But when Chase Utley arrived in Major League Baseball, there was not that maturity factor, or there wasn't a gap between, he had to kind of figure himself out. He had to round himself into a hitter. No, man, didn't he start his career off with a home run? I mean, Chase Utley came out of the box and never really kind of looked behind. There was never that period of time with him. He was a high caliber player right from the very beginning. I don't remember a lag time of, we have to wait and see and he's developing. And no, Chase Utley was a different level right from the very beginning. And he was obviously a core member of those 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Phillies teams, along with Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, Cole Hamels, Carlos Ruiz, players like that. They were obviously core members. They were players that you would never, ever think about trading, especially during the years 07 through 11, or 12 maybe, actually. They would never be even questioned about being traded. If their names popped up in a trade, you would be like, no, next. There's nothing you could have offered to get Chase Utley off the Phillies during those years. Can you say the same thing about Bryson Stott, though? Can you say the same thing about his value to this team right now? Is there not a trade offer that could come down, especially when it comes to this team's pitching issues, when it comes to this team's overzealousness to try to hit home runs and lack of contact hitters and lack of hitters that put the ball in play? Is there not, a trade package that you would explore for Bryson Stott? Absolutely. Now, again, I know there's more to being a core member than just trade value and not trading or trading a player. I get that. But when I think of core players, at least when I think of them, they're hands off. Mike Schmidt, core player. I will never trade Mike Schmidt. I wouldn't trade Mike Schmidt when his career fell off a ledge. I ain't going to trade him. Steve Carlton. I wasn't going to trade Steve Carlton until things went really south with him at the end of his career. But I would never even entertain a trade offer for a core player like a Steve Carlton. That's what I think about when I think about those types of players as being core players. And again, I'm not, and I asked the question. I didn't answer the question. And my review of Bryson Stott was pretty positive. and he was a very consistent hitter for this team. He has all the things, all the tools that you want. He doesn't hit the ball off that hard often, but that's not what we're asking him to do. But is he a core piece to what the Phillies are trying to do for the future? I think it's a good question, and I think it's a subjective question. So that's all I wanted to say by that. And I took a lot of backlash, like, how dare you say that? Yeah, no, damn right I'll say it. I'll say anything I goddamn want to say. But that's the reasoning around why I said it, was because when I look at him, when I thought of core, I thought of the comparisons between him and Chase Utley that I heard so often last year. And I wanted to kind of comment on that. He's not Chase Utley. Not to say that he won't develop into a player like Chase Utley. And I don't think he's ever going to be Chase Utley, but I'm not asking him to be. I'm asking him to be Bryson Stott. But if he can be a comp to Chase Utley and what he provided this team for so many years, and even longer if he stays healthier, then that's great. But to sit here and say that he's Chase Utley-like, I got to pump the brakes on that really, really hard, because he's not Chase Utley-like. But again, I'm not asking him to be. I'm asking him to be Bryson Stott. But you know, it was a question that came up a lot last year, which prompted me to ask the question in my article. Make sure you're checking out those articles. They're all over our webpage. They're all over our social media stuff. I do about 2 a week. The next one's coming out here in a couple days. I'm not going to tell you who the player is, but we're driving all the way towards the end. We'll have articles drop into right before the start of the regular season on March 29th, I believe. Get to get you guys ready for the Phillies season. So make sure you're looking out for those right now. And Michael says, fire Robbie now. Yeah. Again, we're going to get into that. And David says, yep. I don't know what he's referring to. Fire Robbie and trade his man, crush Schwarber. We're going to talk about that too. Robbie Alomar was good, Michael. He absolutely was. But he didn't have the staying power. His career kind of flamed out after a while there. I saw Robbie. It was funny while watching all those All-Star games today. You know, Cal Ripken. Did you know Cal Ripken played in the 2001 All-Star game? The friggin' 2001 All-Star game he was in. I couldn't believe it. Him and Tony Gwynn. That was their last All-Star games. I think they retired at the end. I did not know that Cal Ripken played until 2001. What has happened, man? That guy played over 20 years in the league? Or close to 20 years? Amazing. I'm sorry. Nelson says Chase. Yep. David says Stott is Harper's buddy. They won't trade him. Okay. Oh, man, whatever. Hopefully we can make another run. And can't wait to see Aiden Miller in spring training. I've heard anything about great things. I have heard great things about Aiden Miller as well. Where's he going to play, though? He's third baseman by trade. Alec Boehm could be moved to first base. We're going to do it with Bryce Harper. Actually, Aiden Miller is years and years away from, maybe not years and years, about 2 years away from seriously. I mean, listen, when you're looking at Miller and you're looking at Crawford and you look at those position players that are coming up behind him or coming up now, obviously the future looks pretty good, in those core spots on the field. But let's address one of the positions that are not looking too good, not looking too bad either, but just not what I think they should be, and that is our pitching staff. So again, going back to the articles that we've been writing, or I've been writing, there's the 5 pitchers that are pretty much going to be fighting for a rotational spot this spring. Well, not really fighting, but this really is our rotation. Is going to be Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Walker, and I guess Sanchez. Which, to be honest with you, if the season started today and that was what the starting 5 were, I would be okay with that. Honestly, would be. The one thing I wouldn't be okay with was there's absolutely nothing below them. There's no intermediate between the starting rotation and AAA. There's not a fringe player that's ready to come right up and join that rotation. Now, they did go out and they signed, what's his name, Spencer Turnbull the other day. He is a former first-round pick from the Tigers, 2014, has had really massive injury issues throughout his young career. I believe he's got a career 4.59 or something like that ERA. Really hasn't pitched that much lately due to the injuries. He was coming off of Tommy John in 22, pitched only 7 games last year, had like a 7.67 ERA. Obviously is, going to get an opportunity here, fully recovered from Tommy John. Maybe he can compete for a 5th, one of those roster spots or rotational spots, would potentially push somebody to the bullpen or push himself to the bullpen in a long relief situation. But again, I don't necessarily think I need more long relievers coming out of the pen. I need a closer. I need a back end bullpen kind of guy. But Turnbull might, he provides a little bit more depth to that bullpen or to that rotation and to that pitching staff in general. He's not a needle mover type of move, but it's a high risk or a high reward, low risk type signing for the Phillies. I'm okay with that. I need to see some more from that. There needs to be a few more of those types of signings for this team going forward as we get ready for the spring. But I can live with the Spencer Turnbull signing. It's an okay signing. It addressed a need. And now we have to address some other needs. Again, what's the bench situation? Are we going into the season with the same dreadful bench? Is Jake Cave going to hold the season on his shoulders for me again like he did last year? I'm telling you, the lasting legacy of 170 some odd games of the Phillies last year for me, and trust me, I covered the majority of them on the Fightins Final, but the lasting legacy of all the baseball I watched, all the baseball I reported on, all the baseball I talked about, the lasting friggin' image of me is watching Jake Cave come up to the plate in Game 7 of the NLCS and pop up down the left field line or right field line to end the game. That is the lasting image I have of the 2023 Phillies. Are we coming back with the same bench? That has to be addressed. I mentioned Soler. He's out there. I know he's going to demand money, and he's a DH by trade, but that's great by me. Then he can sit his ass on the bench. We can use him. And we can put him in the outfield if need be. Keep Schwarber out of the outfield. There needs to be some things done still with this team heading into spring training. There's still the same issues that plagued this team personnel-wise are still here now. Now, the Kyle Schwarber in leadoff. Another big story that I'm going to be following very heavily at spring training. Are we going to actually accept the fact that Kyle Schwarber is going to come back as our leadoff hitter this year? That needs to change. Rob Thompson needs to grab his managerial balls and make a decision for the betterment of the team. And I don't care how comfortable Kyle Schwarber feels or doesn't feel leading off. It's about how productive he can be for the team. And if I can put him on in batting fourth or fifth, and when he only homers or walks anyway, no matter where he bats in the lineup, it's not like I'm going to put him in the leadoff spot and he's going to start hitting doubles, or I'm going to put him in cleanup and he's going to start striking out. No, he's going to strike out regardless of where I have him in the lineup. And this whole he only feels comfortable leading off is a crock of crap. All right, but if I can put him where I can maximize his ability, which is to hit home runs and walk, with runners on base in front of him, more times than not. I mean, this is the analytical age, right? You people live your lives by the binder anyway. Doesn't it tell you that if you put a guy who hits majority of home runs or walks, put him down lower in the lineup to where he could produce more runs for you when he does produce? So that needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed. I don't need to see Kyle Schwarber leading off anymore, right? I don't need to see it. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for this team. That needs to be addressed. And the fact that this team needs to learn how to hit with runners on base. This team needs to learn how to situationally hit and not to go out there swinging for home runs. Now, how much that's actually going to change, that was a big talking point at the end of the season during their press conference about how they're going to change things and do all those things. I don't know how much that's going to change, and I don't know how much we can expect that to change, but it needs to. Because this team had a what was it? I don't have my spreadsheet. I got to fire it up. But it was like 220 batting average with runners in scoring position. It's horrible, dude. It's horrible. So this team needs to learn how to produce runs. So there's a lot of things coming up. Jesus, God, man, you guys are killing me here. Michael says, I believe the Phillies need a legit closer. That's I agree with you. And then Dave Dombrowski touched on that, didn't he, Michael, by saying that they were looking at free agents. I guess he was probably talking about Josh Hader, but certain free agents didn't want to come here. Now, he didn't mention names and he didn't mention positions, but he did mention certain free agents did not want to come here because they weren't guaranteed. He wasn't guaranteeing them anything. And I took from that. Closers weren't going to come here because they weren't going to be guaranteed that they're going to be the closer because this team uses closer by committee. I agree with you. I don't like it either. And especially when you have a manager like Rob Thompson who consistently pushes the wrong buttons with that committee, puts the wrong closer in. I never liked it either. So, But you're right. Again, this is another one of the questions that this team has heading into this season. We definitely need a closer. Again, they're not going to get a closer. They're going to get multiple closers. They're going to get Kirkland, Sir Anthony, Soto, and Alvarado. They're the closer. That's your closer right there. And it's going to be who's available that night, who analytically stacks up better against the opponent, lefty versus righty. I don't even know if that's going to be a thing. But that's your closer. It's not a person. It's a group. So I don't agree with it. I really don't. Phillies bottom of the barrel picking with Turnbull, just like the Phillies. I think it's a low risk, high reward move for a team that, you're right, that has not done anything to address depth problems. I mean, the rotation's okay the way it is. I can live with it. It's a rotation that won them 90 games last year. I can live with that rotation. And for the most part, other than the Walker stuff that happened in the postseason, it's a rotation that got you through the majority of the playoffs, with the exception of Nola kind of melting down there in the final start in the NLCS. I can live with that rotation. I honestly can. But there needs to be depth to protect from injury. There needs to be depth to protect from, just in case somebody is not pitching well and they don't have the depth. And Turnbull does provide you that depth there. So I'm okay with it. Shaking my head. He says, I hope not. That was a bad spot for him to lead off. Yeah, it was, and it's been over the last 2 years now, and we need to stop it. It needs to stop. I get Turnbull could do long relief or 5 if possibly, just like the Phillies, to get the guy with an injury-plagued career. Yeah, well, that's, again, yeah. And how long is Zach Wheeler going to go without injury? How long is Aaron Nola? Where's some wood here? Let me knock on that. I mean, these guys have been relatively injury-free. God forbid something happens to them long-term. And then we really got problems because of that depth problem that I just talked about is going to go out the window if something happens to the top end of the rotation, because then we're really screwed. Really screwed. I agree. Too many men stranded. Oh, no, it was a huge problem. Bat Schwarber 4th or 5th, and he'll hit 40 home runs and we'll get 120 more RBIs. I agree, Michael, 100%. I agree. So the Phillies will be heading down the Clearwater, or they're in Clearwater, or the pitchers and catchers are, because they start spring training on Wednesday. And, of course, here on the Edge of Philly Sports, be on the lookout for those articles that I talked about, those player spotlight articles, and the Fighting's Final, which will be coming back here very soon. We're going to do a preview show, and then, of course, we'll get you things fired up for the regular season on March 29th. All right, let's head down the home stretch because we've been going at this for a while, and I do, as I said, I have double duty tonight. But before I get on to my next segment, let me remind you all that this segment was presented to you by Dolan's Bar and Grill, or Dolan's, not Bar and Grill, but Dolan's Bar. I always want to add grill there, at 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park for Quizzo, music, great times, memorabilia giveaway. Head to Dolan's because you never know who may fall through the front door. All right, let's finish things up with the Flyers. Again, I'm not going to spend much time really getting into the Flyers. It's on right now, and they're not doing too well. They got their hands full with the Coyotes. Again, I'm going to be on Clear the Ice a little bit later tonight with my man Al, and we're going to give you an in-depth breakdown of the Flyers. There's a lineup. Again, you're seeing Pat and Mike for Monday as well. They have, I guess the Pat and Mike both work for PennDOT, and then with the bad weather coming in, they're going to have to be on call early tomorrow morning. So we're going to flip-flop Monday for Thursday. So me and Al tonight, and Pat and Mike on Thursday. So be on the lookout for the Clear the Ice show here, probably within the hour once this thing wraps up. But I do want to hit on a couple things here on the Flyers. 3-game winning streak, as I mentioned. They have their hands full with the Coyotes right now, but playing really well. Sam Emerson, the best story coming out of the All-Star break, the way he's been playing goalie. But some more comments rolling in here. He thinks Harper has to go. I think Harper has to go to Schwarber and tell him that you're batting fourth and protecting me. That might actually be that might not be a bad idea, Mike. First time here, definitely going to be following. Oh, well, thank you, Nelson. I definitely appreciate the follow. We all do here on the Edge of Philly Sports. Make sure we got you covered 24/7 for all Philly sports. So please and thank you. Anyway, Sam Emerson's the best story of this post All-Star break time for the Flyers, as they kind of are, keep the surprise going with everybody and the way they've been playing. Hasn't been complete games. Hasn't been pretty. They've had meltdowns, or they've had, not say meltdowns, they've had breakdowns throughout games. They've kind of, gone away from their style of playing throughout periods of those games, those first 3, but they've found ways to win against some serious opponents. The Florida Panthers, the Winnipeg Jets. The Kraken are not necessarily a good team, but they're a quality team, and they found ways to win those games. Now tonight they're struggling with the Coyotes with 1 period left to play. As I mentioned, make sure you're checking back in with Clear the Ice at the end of the game. But it's been a real pleasure talking about the Flyers and getting deep into the Flyers. We're going to have to shift things around here on this show. I'm probably going to put the Flyers up top, leading things off now that the football season's over with. But the Flyers keep finding ways to win, and they keep finding ways to keep us entertained. And definitely the rebuild situation is feeling better and better every day, and that they're closer and closer every day, and that this may not be a long process anyway. But here on this program, of course, we do our Flyer prospect breakdown segment every week, and tonight it's time for that right now. So without further ado, let's go to this week's Flyer prospect breakdown person, and it is a young man by the name of Massimino Rizzo. He is a centerman who plays for the University of Denver. He is currently 28 games into his season, 10 goals, 34 assists, 44 points, 10 penalty minutes, and a plus-minus of 24. A pretty hefty plus-minus for a pretty good program, University of Denver. They are a Frozen Four, perennial Frozen Four program in NCAA Division I hockey. And Massimino is a huge part of that. How he was acquired by the Flyers. The Flyers acquired him from the Hurricanes this past summer for David Case. He was originally drafted by the Hurricanes in 2019 in the 7th round. He is on his 3rd year of college eligibility, so he has 1 more year of college eligibility left. But as we all know, as hockey contracts go, if the Flyers do not sign him this year at some point, he'll be a free agent heading forward. He can sign whoever he wants to. He's kind of an undersized centerman, as centermen go. He comes in at a whopping 5'11", 175 pounds. I'm not necessarily sure that is a frame that the Flyers can that grades out right now for the NHL, and especially at center in the NHL. But he does have tools. He's got a quick shot. I had a whole bevy of his highlight package keyed up for you, but I'm only going to play you in the essence of time. I'm only going to play one clip of his highlight package. But I just wanted to demonstrate he's got very fast hands, and he's got really good awareness. Again, obviously awareness for the net are things that we want to be able to see from our centerman. And here's so we're going to key up his highlight package right now. I just want to kind of awareness here. Massimino's right here. This is going to be a 2-on-1 breakout for the University of Denver. There's going to be some Keystone Coppery going on here at the blue line. These two players are going to come, or these three, and somehow are going to come together. But watch Massimino as he's going to kind of split and go into a 2-on-1. Again, he's right here. See, there's kind of like there's a little turnover. I'm sorry, he's over here. That's him right there. Now, as he comes in, I want you to keep an eye on him. Nose for the net. Boom. Now, this is key right here. This is what a centerman does, or what a hockey player does when he signals to his mate, line mate, passing mate, whatever. Obviously, hey, I'm ready. This is what I want to do. I'm in position. Feed me the puck. If you're going to feed me the puck, go ahead and feed it to me. Don't be afraid. I'm ready to handle it. He signals to his line mate, but he's consistently moving forward towards the net. He's going to back off, and then he's got a quick wrist shot, and he buries the goal. So again, 5'11", 175 pounds. Here it is again. That's him, number 13. He's going to come out. He's going to separate. Decent speed. Bad defense here. I mean, it's a pretty bad 2-on-1 situation anyway, but really a bad play all around. Horrible goaltending here. He should have actually made that save. But there's Massimino Rizzo for you. The Flyers currently in the system right now, as prospects go, he is the 3rd leading scorer in the Flyers system. But he is the University of Denver product. 5'11", 175 pounds. Will be a free agent if he does not sign his NHL pro deal this year. He's on his 3rd year of eligibility of college. He could play another year next year, but it won't be under this. His rights will be forfeited by the Flyers if he decides to go back to college. So The Flyers have a decision to make with him. Not what you would call one of the more sexier prospects in the system right now. The Flyers have been actually trying to get him. I believe Danny Briere tried to trade him initially with the moving Tony Delangelo to their Hurricanes. Remember back in the summer, there was all that going on. Tony Delangelo ended up being released by the Flyers because they couldn't trade a player back to the team that he was traded from in a year, all that. So I think he was discussed in that deal. So the Flyers were trying to get him. They got him. So there must be some hope for him there. Does he have a potential? He's a project. He's not coming to the NHL anytime soon. He'll if he does sign his deal at the end of the college hockey season, expect him to go to Lehigh or Reading and kind of work his way from there. But definitely has some giddy up and has some skills. Again, here's his line so far for the season. 28 games played, 10 goals, 34 assists, 44 points, 10 penalty minutes, and a gaudy plus 24 for a very good University of Denver program. So there's your Flyer prospect breakdown of the week, Massimino Rizzo. I don't know if he's a great city who won't allow Rizzo statue. I don't think many people understand that reference there, David. I get it, and then a lot of the older people will. But yeah, Massimino Rizzo is your guy. But Flyers are playing well. They're right in the thick of this. We're going to shift some of the conversation to be more aligned with hockey going forward. I'm not going to save it to the end of the show. Probably going to lead off with it starting forward. But if you want more from hockey from me, then don't forget to tune in to Clear the Ice here after the Flyers game. It is 3-2, early part of the third period. So we'll be back at you at the end of the Flyers game, and we'll give you everything then that I didn't give you here. So I'm sorry that I didn't provide the greatest of Flyer coverage on this show tonight. I got really depth. I told you I was going to be Philly-centric tonight, and I was. Last things last. Don't forget for Philly Sports Trips. They got you covered. Trips down to Clearwater. I believe that one's sold out. This one, I think there's still some room for. And of course, the stadium show, the stadium series, the Flyers trip on February 17th out to MetLife Stadium. They're going to bus you out there, give you a tailgate, tickets to the game, whole 9 yards. Head over to www.phillysportstrips.com. Check out everything they have to offer. I think there's still some spots for that trip remaining. If not, make sure you're checking out everything else they have to offer, because they got you covered, because they travel like the pros. And folks, that will do it for me. Thank you for hanging in there for me tonight. Great show. Thank you for all the contributions. Thank you for all the chime-ins. Thank you for all the input. I appreciate it as always. And don't forget everything that we have here to offer on Philly Sports Strips on Edge of Philly Sports. Edge of Philly Sports. And don't forget, I will be coming back at you a little bit later on with the Clear the Ice program with my main man, Big Al. And as my main man, Nick Foles, would say,
let's make some noise. Come on.
That's right, Nick. Let's make some noise. I'm sorry that you lost your record, or I'm sorry you lost sole possession of your Super Bowl record, buddy. But what do they say? That is the news, and I'm out of here.